Welcome to another episode of Mindful Drawing with Rooks is Fun. I'm glad you could join along in this meditative practice using our whole body experience, the tactility of the pen and the pencil on the page, as well as the constant repatterning of our eye, mind, hand connection to explore your creativity and find a little relaxation to this act of drawing together. This week, I want to explore the idea of spacing, of making space, of spacing between, in, and around things, of taking that opportunity through this practice to think about how we can bring attention to where we are in the space of things both tangible and invisible in our lives, and let that practice reach out into how we interface with those around us, how we might reposition the space to be more open, to be more engaging, to be more accepting when we have to kind of shift our bubbles to pull in and to project outwards as we all share in this territory around us, our own little gravitational fields, pushing and pulling, shifting our perspective and opening up in this act of spacing through drawing. So grab your favorite pen or pencil, a pad of paper or a sketchbook, and come draw with me. Might as well jump in. I was thinking today, in place of doing a warm-up, just to dive right in and maybe take some of the drawing at a bit of a slow, even pace. I was journaling this morning about space, because it's on my mind a lot in architecture, but of ways we can practice making it and developing it for ourselves, or even having some mindful inhabitation of it, and thought maybe some soft, bubbly forms, anything that kind of feels good to move the pen or pencil around. I guess I'll use the pen here. That just start to define an area of space, but moving the pen or pencil really slowly, almost to the point where it's hard to move smoothly, so that the paper begins to interact, maybe even resist a little bit with the pen, and using that bit of resistance to guide and redirect our fingers and hands as the page might pop our pencil or pen in one direction and start to make these soft forms, little clouds or raisins, in this very slow, tracking, kind of deliberate motion of the hand. And each new one, this act of kind of spacing things out, or making a space around and between things, something we can bring to our attention and mindfulness in this practice with this drawing. Let my focus drift inwards towards the hand as I make those slow, soft curves around a shape, feeling the vibrations coming up through the pen or pencil. Maybe if it's graphite, it's very smooth, kind of silky across the page. This felt type pen, there's a bit of a scratch to it. Existing wants to rough over the fibers in the paper. What does the type of medium communicate back up through your fingertips in the vibrations? And with that attention, repositioned into the space there of the tips of the fingers, the subtle pressures and redirections as we have to adapt to each local condition of those slips or bumps in the page. Sometimes the thumb pushing into the pencil, others the index finger keeping it on track. Just narrowing into that space of our interface here with the page, as we have lots of room to keep spacing these objects around. Just a little bit of a travel or a walk or meander in each new location. And the new location, whether sequential or jumping around, puts the arm and the hand into a new place where we can let that attention that's in the narrow space of our fingertips and our subtle pressures drift outwards up through the joints into the knuckle interface with our main hand. How are those light movements working together with the larger movements of the wrist? As we bring our attention to keeping our hand up off the paper, as we may overlap previous shapes, smudging or smearing or getting dirty. It's okay. But that attention to the way we're holding the pen or the pencil can both be a practice of technique, but also bring our awareness more into the space of the chain of action, the chain of elements that work together to provide us this interface, sometimes for communication, expression, others for just exploration or inhabitation here as we keep spacing these soft objects. We can continue the travel of that awareness further into the body, bring it into our torso, begin to connect it with our breathing. A breath in as we find the location to begin the new spacing of the object. And just breathing out around the meander. You can start to adjust the speed, perhaps to the influence of the breath. It might begin to smooth the shapes as we allow a breath out to be the guide for our hand, and a breath in to help us reposition. And in those out breaths, for me, they're often not perfectly flat or consistent, but there's little oscillations as the air has to deflate from different places within the lungs, as different muscles engage to control the diaphragm, the upper and mid back, the lower abdomen, all of the parts involved in drawing that breath into our body and managing its flow out from the body. These things that have These things that happen generally outside of our attention to keep us going, to keep us oxygenated, to help us remove the buildup of toxins in the blood, that we're also able to access, bring some guidance or attention to let the way we breathe, the motion of the body and breath draw us in to a space each repositioning and evaluation of the spacing, perhaps between these soft shapes. And as I've been drawing, beginning to notice that I'm keeping a kind of evenness to the spacing, a somewhat consistency to the size. If that's feeling good and helping to connect our breathing and our nervous system in this act of visual outlet, keeping it going. Or as you bring attention to it in the visual realm, you might see new opportunities, new spacing, tighter packings, larger forms or smaller, longer breaths or slower. Smoothing out the starting roughness from our paper. With a little bit quicker pace to our motion. Perhaps to take an opportunity here to trust in the hand and the technique. Let the eyes close for a little while. Maybe it's just in the beginning 2/3 of the curve as you reopen to close, or a full tracking of what you see inside without concern for the completion. The more we can inhabit what we might see in the drawing, as well as let go of that in these moments of practice to see something new emerge. And if the density of the page starts to make each new repositioning a bit of a calculation more than a selection of new space, make you begin to look for new layers of connection between the elements, perhaps within that space. New configurations of these soft shapes can start to inhabit what might be emerging, getting to reach out and grapple with the opening of territories. And letting a chance for our eyes and hands to track together as we inhabit that space we open up with the technique and just with a little time of breathing and entering into ourselves. Flowing in between, using the visual guides to give us some constraint, a playground to flow quickly or smoothly, to flow slow and evenly in the space between what might arise. Each element that's come before within the drawing being something found or encountered, each new repositioning an entirely new experience in the drawing, a new territory to map out with this pen or pencil. Perhaps a new opportunity to gain some interface with the space. And if as the line meanders through these opened in-betweens, you might find your mind begin to wander. We've given it that space to try to fill and inhabit as it likes to do. And that might be an opening up, a reimagining or a re-seeing of things within the drawing that you've started to create. Or it can be a letting out, returning at any time to our breath cycles. Returning that attention from the macro, from the movement of the breath into the torso and the body, and letting that attention flow outwards through the arms, through the legs that have been supporting us here as we draw, into the fingers, the hands, bringing the breath in to all of those connected spaces, letting oxygen flow out through them. And then letting the breath out, free them to wander, to extend out to their limits of energy. While the body prepares to recycle. These practices in a medium-driven mindfulness are similar to other forms of meditation, in that we can use the kind of detachment or distancing method to bring our mindful attention to what arises. That may just be the shapes and forms, squiggles and spaces in the drawing, or other things that are creeping in the back of our mind, riding in the front of our attention, and practice our connection or interface with what might come up. Do we breathe it out and let it dissipate? Or do we use the drawing as an act of organization, of walking through and perhaps opening up that space and just letting it have a little room for a little while, letting it have access to this ancient communication and expression medium, thinking with our hands and our eyes, thinking with our senses, opening our creative mind, our adaptive mind that works within the space that it's given, works with the physical aspects of the body, the breath, the motion, the sensations. To interpret and understand what we might encounter in the world, to bring it in, to digest it, and to re-express it or reflect it. Then we can reach a phase where there's probably a lot of lines, an amazing amount of density and form and shape on the paper, and taking time in that space, just keep zooming in and out, scaling up and down, letting the same soft shapes continue spacing the paper, compressing the voids between and within, expanding new territories, discovering new shapes or configurations, flowing new pathways, drawing in with our eyes and our hands. In any position or at any size, any speed or intensity, we reestablish just that moment where the pen or pencil is on the paper, moving through space, tracking our whole body's actions, acting as an expression of the connection of our nervous system with our muscles, with these external objects. Practicing. We'll take the next few minutes just to draw with ourselves and with each other in this space. And experience each moment of action. as we begin to draw ourselves back into the world around us, to take a few deeper breaths, expanding the rib cage forward and back, left and right, drawing the air down with our diaphragm into our lower abdomen, expanding the mid-back, letting those ribs in the midline reach out, and that pressure brings some of our attention back to how we might be sitting, feeling here. Just like to guide us back into our eyes, some large blinks, some squeezing and opening as the focus in one space has gripped us for some time. You looking up and far, looking close and near, and just a little bit of gratitude for the opportunities we have with whatever pen or pencil or instrument that you're using, its design, its availability, the way it might feel on the page, the general privilege and opportunity we have to spend a little time creating something for ourselves and practicing that attention and release. And begin to wrap up, or feel free to keep drawing, feeling good and in the flow. And thank you for joining. I like to end these sessions with a bit of gratitude for all the little things that support our privilege to have this time of creativity and expression, something we can share back through time with nearly all of our ancestors, both ancient and contemporary. The feeling or need to express things around us, to translate them into the patterns that we see in our mind, to use drawing to communicate, to evoke, and just to let things out in the world with their own lives. As you encounter your own drawings or the drawings of others, paintings, photographs, any creative medium, we all have a chance to enter into that world, to meander through the space created by this act of expression. So enjoy your time with this. Thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful week. Be well. This is an exploration of spacing, making space with these soft little bubbles, feeling the interaction of the fingers and the hand with the page, allowing our eyes and hand to meander with a bit of a guidance from a technique. Each new territory or little bubble here, a new world, an opportunity to just sink our attention in, to meander and explore space, to let those eyes track contours, or to let it go and just see where the pen might flow, moving in whatever direction, clockwise or counterclockwise, that might feel comfortable in the moment.